afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Top 5 Project Portfolio Business Challenges. I'm Jenny Ward and I will be walking you through the webinar today. Our agenda will be introductions. First, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and then we'll talk about different opportunities we have for addressing these challenges. By the end of the webinar, you'll have some knowledge about each of these apps and or each of these settings, I should say, and features. And we'll be able to go through and learn a little bit about how we can take this information and use it to help us to meet those challenges that we face. My name is Jen Ward, Jenny. I've been in IT for 20 years. Which is horrifying to think that I am that old, but in fact I am. And I've had a focus on service delivery. My background is a project server and SharePoint admin predominantly. I worked at a global data and telephony company. And the thing I loved the most about my job all day, every day was helping people solve problems and puzzles. I find that to be the most fun. You know, come to me and I'll see if I can help you figure out a solution to the challenge. So I think today's webinar will show you that side of my personality, hopefully. You might ask why PPM Works. We're a gold Microsoft certified partner, exclusively focused on project and SharePoint and Office 365 also, which you'll see today. We'll be using some new Office 365 tools. We have many implementations under our belt, over 225 implementations at this point, and we've trained thousands of students and users and executives. We have big name companies also that we've had the privilege of working with, and we've delivered dozens of industry presentations. We are always present at the annual Microsoft project conferences, Project Summit, and PMI conference, including sharing our expertise with volunteers at MPUG and the Project Summit. Long story short, we guarantee your success because it's a reflection on us. We believe in honesty, integrity, and dedication. We all get along really well at PPM Works, and we feel really strongly and passionately about what we do. We hope that you have trusted experience with us, and that you will find that the methodology and the templates and the suggestions and all of the advice that we give really is quite competitive in the market. So the goals of today's session, we're going to learn about how these things can help assist with the common business challenges. We're going to cover the project number field and how we can make the best use of that. We're going to go through reporting data settings and how they can affect your data and visualizations. It's a relatively new feature, so we'll touch upon that and what they've changed and why they've changed it. We're going to learn how to incorporate graphical indicators into Power BI reports. You're probably familiar with the graphical indicators, the colored dots that you see as status indicators in Project Online. So we're going to look at the kind of extra steps that you need to take to be able to incorporate those into Power BI. And then we're going to learn with that Power BI report how to embed a Power BI report into a SharePoint site. And finally, we're going to talk about creating Microsoft Forms, a survey, to analyze project process and feedback. Another good way, you know, often challenges you have in an organization might include team morale and complaints that people have about the way certain processes run, or the fact that some areas seem stronger than others. Well, without really being able to analyze that data, you don't have anything really tangible that you can bring to executives and say, hey, these are the areas we need to work on. This is what we need to fix. So that kind of analysis will help. So we'll go through that. So let's get ready. Here we go. We're going to start with the project ID field. So you may be familiar with project ID. It's a built-in field in Project Online. And each enterprise project type that you create allows you to customize the project ID. So the appeal of this is that it would allow you to group projects categorically by these IDs. For instance, if you had an organization that often did finance projects and often did HR projects or IT projects, you could prefix those project numbers with IT or HR or FIN for finance, whatever you like. Another option is that you could postfix, also called suffix, a project if it is in the project idea phase. So you could have just a regular number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then dash idea at the end. Once that project is no longer in the idea phase and it is approved as an actual project, then you can switch it and you can change that project ID in the project details page if that field is available. So let's take a look at what that looks like. We go here, you can see that we'll edit the project detail pages, and then we'll be able to add the project ID to whatever project whatever detail page we're going to select. We're going to choose that project field on the left and be able to move it over to the right, and then it will be available to edit in that page. So let's take a look. Here we are in the test finance template. This is an enterprise project type. So like I was mentioning, if you had an organization that was doing finance projects sometimes and HR projects other times, you could use your finance template and you could decide that you want to prefix this with an FIN so that it would be very clear that this is a finance project just based on the number. Okay, so you could set that just like that. And then what we do is when we go into the project detail pages here and we see project ID, see, we can remove it here. It will appear here on the left-hand side as an available field to select. It's at the bottom of our list now because it was over on the right, but it would appear alphabetically here. And then we can add it. And then we save this page. And then if we go back to the project detail page, and we go to project details, it's not going to show because, of course, I'm on the spot, so it won't show there. But what happens is it ends up on the page just like the other fields showed, and it will display, and then you can edit it after the fact. So again, if it were in the project idea phase initially, you could have idea on there. If it were a test finance template project, you could precede it with FIN for finance, and it allows you to then sort those projects by project ID. So in this case, these are all of the ones at the top that have no value. And then these are sorting. And if they were, these are sorting numerically, descending numerically now. But if we had all FIN projects together, those would all group together. HR projects would all group together. The same thing would apply in reporting. You could even filter by projects that begin with project ID FIN or projects ID HR. So it gives you a good way to kind of mess with the display and the sorting in your pages. You can easily identify what kind of project it is just based on the project ID, because then you don't have to have finance anywhere in the project name. You can just have it in the project ID, and then it makes it easily identifiable. Let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. So let's move on to project reporting settings. So this is a relatively new change that Microsoft has made. And the reason that they've made this change is for performance sake. So previously this would be set by default to daily. And now what the default is on a new environment only. So I don't want you to panic. This is not going to change on your already existing environment. But if you were to set up a new instance of PWA, this would be defaulted to never here. And what the result would be is that if you went to resource utilization, for instance, you wouldn't see any data. Everything would be blank. So our recommendation is that you set this to daily here, and then, or weekly. If you're only ever reporting on weekly information, you can do that, and it will be a better impact on performance of the system. Daily is probably your best bet, and that's what we recommend. So I'll show you. There are some additional information here that you can access, and this presentation will be available after the fact in PDF form. If you email info@ppmworks.com, then you'll be able to get all of this data and learn a little bit more about the online changes, particularly when it comes to this granularity of the time phase data. We have had, I will tell you that just recently I had a client where we set up a new instance for this, and they tested. Luckily it was in a stage environment, and they began to test, and they realized that none of the resources and the data for resources had migrated over like we expected it to. This was the reason. It was because the default value on that reporting was set to never when it should have been set to daily. The second we set it to daily, all of the projects needed to be republished to reflect that information, and then it showed just as it should. All of the resource utilization capacity planning was all available. Okay. So now on to some more exciting stuff that was kind of more business information. Graphical indicators. Now, you're probably familiar with the graphical indicators that you see in Project Online. We can go back here and you can see I've got a few of them here whose overall status is showing green, okay? So when we go back, you see that the way that those values get in there, it's sadly not just magic. They're represented by a drop-down list that defines what those values are. Okay, so for the purposes of our overall status field here, we have several status fields in our environment. We have resource status, risk status, overall status. And they all reference the same lookup table, which is our status lookup table, which has 3 values in it: green, yellow, and red. Okay, so in your environment, the first thing you'd need to do is create the status lookup table first, and then what you do is you'd create whatever fields you need that will reference that list of color codes. And then you can reference that lookup table in each of these created enterprise custom fields. Then what happens is, as I like to say, the world is your oyster. Because all of these pre-made indicators come with Project Online. Now in Project Online, you're going to, when you set graphical indicators on the enterprise custom field, they're going to default to these very simple color boxes at the top. There's a yellow one, a green one, a red one that happens to not be on this screenshot, but they look just like this, the ones that you're used to seeing, okay? But when we do this work in Power BI, we need to tell Power BI which images to use to show in a report. Now, Power BI is constantly changing. So every month we get new updates. There are new cool things that they add. It's entirely possible that it will get to the point where this becomes much more intuitive in Power BI. But for the time being, this is a good workaround. And also, it gives us the option to use a lot more interesting images. Furthermore, in this location, this is the location where these images are stored. So here it would be your PWA site address here at the beginning of this URL. And then layouts, Inc., PWA images, and then the image name that you see referenced above. So if I needed this purple indicator here, then I change this image name from above to cf_9p.png. Okay, and we'll get to that in Power BI. But the beauty of this also is that If you have a particular logo that your company uses, perhaps you're a toy company that always uses a particular down arrow that's in line with your company logo. Or if you're a hospital and you want to use particular medical indicators here that are used in medical records, you could add those PNG images to this library as well, and then be able to use them in your reports, okay? So this is what the images look like when you're in Project Online. This is from our project list, just a screenshot here, showing overall indicators, schedule indicators, cost indicators. On this example for schedule, you'll see that there are gray indicators here as well. For the schedule indicator, this is because I have a value set so that if there's no value set, it will still show an indicator, okay? So it won't just show blank like this. It will actually show a value that indicates nobody's entered data here, okay? The same thing here. So this is what it would look like on a Power BI report, and this is what it looks like on Project Online. As you can see, same images, okay? Those gradiated, I've heard them referred to as Harvey balls. I just call them color indicators, okay? So let's go and take a look at Power BI and how we do this. So we've got this overall status field, okay? And actually, as we showed on the drop-down list, the overall status field is simply text. It's green, red, or yellow. Project Online is smart enough to translate that into a graphical indicator, okay? So they've already done the work in Project Online that we're going to do here, okay? So I do this in 2 steps. First of all, I go to the queries, and I'm gonna look, this particular report has only the projects table in it, okay? And so I'm going to slide over to here, and you're gonna see that I've added a custom field here, and it is a conditional column, and this is how it's set up. We have the 3 values with its if-then statements. Let us use this conditional field. So if the overall status equals green, then I'm going to use the path that I showed you before, and this happens to be the image for green. CF_0 is green. CF_1 is yellow. And CF_2 is red. Now we talked about the gray indicator showing if there was no data. So what I'm saying is if it's green, give me this image. If it's yellow, give me this image. And if it's red, give me this image. Otherwise, this is my favorite part, otherwise, in any other circumstance, if it's blank, if the status indicator is banana or orange rather than green, yellow, or red, and we don't have an image associated, I want to show the gray indicator, which is CF11, okay? The presentation has the cheat sheet that has all of these image names in it for you. MPUG was really great to provide that image and that cheat sheet, so you'll have that available for you, okay? So I'm going to cancel this just because it's already all set and it's there, okay? And then we're going to close and apply this query change, and we're going to go back to the report. So now we've got the overall status that is pulling the text information in, but what we're going to do now is we're going to add the overall status indicator here, okay? Doesn't that look great? No, it doesn't look great at all, does it? Because it's only showing me the text that is now the value of that field. So we have to take this to another level here. We have to select this overall status indicator here, and we need to make the data category, if I can get it to select for me. There we go. It is an image URL. And there we go. So that is telling Power BI, please translate this as an image. Don't translate this as text. And then the overall status indicator comes into your report, okay? And then what you can do, it's up to you, you can entirely remove this overall status field altogether if you want to, or you can leave it there, whichever you prefer. Some organizations prefer to leave the text there. It's good for colorblind people. There are also other options where you can create images. I have a colleague who created images that have a G in the green, an R in the red, and a Y in the yellow. There are built-in ones where, I can't remember which one it is now, but green is a circle, red is a square, and yellow is a diamond, something similar to that, so that people can learn the shapes instead. I think the G, R, and Y are a really good solution if you don't want to have the green, red, yellow text on there. Okay, so now we've got lots of handy reports that we can use. And so let's move on to how we can then take this and we can embed a Power BI report into a project site. Now, what I have here is we've got Power BI, if I have this pulled up someplace here, our Power BI dashboard here is available in the Power BI service. But there's just a couple of drawbacks to this. Number one, it's a different URL that you need to send people to. And if you can get it in a place where they are all day, every day anyway, and you just want a simple report to show on a site page, then embedding this into a particular site is really handy. So the way we do that is first we need to do it in the site pages library on your site. So this would be if you go to site contents, that's where I am now. You get to the contents of the page just like you do on any other SharePoint site. You can see subsites too. These would be all of our associated project sites in this particular instance, the project sites that are auto-created. But this is just our full list of contents here. So we're going to go to site pages. Maybe. Let's try again. Site pages. There we go. And as you can see, I already have one that's created here. That's a Power BI content pack. And give that a moment to load. You can see that the Power BI logo is coming in first. And this is a dashboard that's auto-embedded here into this project site. And just like in the Power BI service, you can go to all the different pages here on the bottom. This is the one we were just looking at, the costs page, okay? You can see milestones, the nice donut visualizations that we've got there, project risks, okay? So really handy. So how do we do that is the question, right? So we're going to create a new site page, okay? I'm going to tell you a trick here. Even if you went into another section of PWA and you went to create a new site page that you wanted, you know, say you go to the report library, you want to create a new site page there, it's always going to send those site pages to this library. So you can send, you know, you can give a link to anyone to this location. This is always where those created pages are going to end up, okay? For a site page to show up on this list, you need to have modern pages enabled. And so we're going to go ahead and create a new site page. And then for a moment, I'm going to come back here while that's thinking about that. And I'm going to embed this in SharePoint Online, okay? All that this is going to do in the Power BI service is it's going to give me a link to this, okay? I've just done Control-C on my screen. And here we are in the page that we've just created. And so we're going to add a web part to this page. Now this is one of my favorite things. Here it is. So what I was talking about with modern pages, if you don't have modern pages enabled, you can still create pages, but you can't create site pages, nor can you create modern site pages. And modern site pages are the only thing that has this Power BI web part enabled on it, okay? So now that Power BI part gets put in there, and then we're actually going to add the report to it now. And all we have to do, I'm doing Control V now to get that link copied in there, okay? We're going to name it. We're going to leave it default, okay? 16.9 is what the report is written in, so we're going to leave it that way. And then on the page that I showed you before, the filter pane was not available, okay? If I go back here, I'm going to close this. This is the filter pane, okay? You could have a situation where you don't want to make that filter pane enabled in this page. Like if you want people to just look at the data as you want them to see it and not filter anything out, you can turn that off, okay? For the sake of this exercise, we'll turn it on. I'll tell you, I am not yet thrilled at the way that this filter looks in an embedded page, but I do, like I said, I see improvements every month with this. So hopefully they'll get enough feedback on that to say, hey guys, you know, I think that this could really be improved, okay? So now we're going to publish this page. Oh, it's going to not let me make the page, the title be blank. And so I need to name it. Okay, and now we're going to publish it. That's good. It caught me in a mistake. And then the first time, it usually takes a little bit long. Oh, that was pretty fast this time. Usually takes, I've seen it take up to a minute to load the first time. Okay, we can close this. And then it will give you this little feedback. And we're going to close that for now. But then see this, what I'd really like is if this filter pane were over here. But what happens is it comes over here and then it shrinks that down a little bit. So if we selected this projects by type, then we'd have the filters available. Okay? So, moving on. I went through those requirements. There are the steps that you'll have as a nice cheat sheet after the fact. Don't forget to name your page like I did. Now we can move on to Microsoft Forms. So Microsoft describes Forms as a tool that allows you to create surveys, quizzes, and polls, and easily see the results as they come in. When you create a quiz or form, you can invite others to respond to it using any web browser, even on mobile devices. So if you're familiar with SurveyMonkey, this is Microsoft's better and easier version. I've used SurveyMonkey. I don't dislike it, but I think this is so easy, it's ridiculous. And it's got embedded reports already for the data, okay? So what we can do is we can create, for instance, a project lessons learned survey might be helpful. You know, I've worked for organizations where the higher ups, as they call them, are constantly trying to change and improve process so that people can work more efficiently, so that people can have less headaches when it comes to the daily tasks that they need to do. Well, I think what's forgotten sometimes, and you may have this experience, is nobody goes down to the trenches and says to people, all right, what do you think of this new process? How is it working for you? You're the one doing it all day, every day. So if you created just a simple survey for team members, you could get some of this feedback, and it could be a non-pressure way of people responding and giving you feedback. So in this example, you can see I've got just simple questions. Overall, how do you feel the process worked? What areas caused the biggest challenges? And what areas provided the greatest amount of assistance? So who helped you the most? And who caused the biggest challenges? Not necessarily people, but maybe particular process areas are a little bit more cumbersome than others. So then when you look at the results, once you have a few results in, you get these really great, I mean, they're basic, but really great pie charts. You can see here, service delivery, probably the most helpful area, service delivery, and the least likely to cause problems. So that's good. Resource management, maybe we've got a little bit of work to do in resource management, okay? Not to say that they're not also helpful, because we've had at least one respondent who said that they thought that resource management was the greatest amount of assistance on their project. Okay, so let's take a look actually at the form. Okay, so this is what it looks like in action. Okay, so you've got two tabs here, the questions and then the responses here. Okay, so you can see that these are the responses. Average time to complete, I can tell you for this particular one, probably not very accurate. It's only 3 questions. I'm guessing that what happened is when I was testing it, I went through and I started to answer one, and then I probably got a phone call and got distracted and went back to it. But that might be helpful to know too. You know, you can see, oh, is this really taking up too much of our team members' time? Is it worth it? Should I streamline the questions? And then there's a status of whether the survey is active or not. Okay, so then if we go back to the home page here on the Forms tab, this is how easy it is to create. We add the question. We want it to be text. There's one. The first question is already done. And then we'll add the question. It will tell us this one we want a choice. Okay, so this one I set to text. This one I'm setting as choice. Need help with my typing word better. Choice 1, choice 2, and that's it. We add the question. Okay, so now when we go to the responses here, we have no responses yet. We go back to the questions. We can go and we can preview what it will look like to the end user. You can change these settings too. You can have your own logo up here. You can change the color scheme, whatever you like, but then you go through and you answer the questions. Second one here, choice 1, submit. And now when we go back, you'll see now there's one response. Okay, these, of course, because they're open text, you're not going to have the same data analysis capabilities that you do on choices. So I highly recommend the choice fields. Okay, and so that's going to just give you a lot more clean data. You know, the same thing applies to any type of Power BI reporting. If you're looking to have those fields show up consistently as consistent data, better to give the user choices rather than letting them have free text capability. You know, it's the same thing where if people just could type in a name, one time I might be entered as Jennifer Ward, the next time I might be entered as Jenny Ward. That would be 2 different values, even though they're both me. Okay? So we've gone through the different options of the project ID field and the, let's go back to the agenda here. We went through the project ID. We talked about how you can add prefixes and suffixes to that to help you sort data, and also auto create numbers so that if you're creating a finance report, it will automatically have the finance prefix. Or if you're in the idea stage, you can automatically have idea as a suffix so you can identify that quickly. We talked about the reporting data settings now being very granular and Microsoft having changed that capability. Again, the reason they did that was for performance purposes for Project Online. But just make sure that if you're setting up a new instance that you're factoring that in, that will by default now be set to never on a new environment. Won't change on your existing environment, luckily, but on a new environment, it will be set to never. We talked about graphical indicators and how those are made in Project Online with a drop-down list that has the values in them, green, red, yellow. The fact that Project Online knows how to translate those automatically, but Power BI needs a little bit more of our helping hand to know what images to reference and how to display them. Then we talked about embedding that Power BI report in your project site and how easy that is if you have modern pages enabled. That might make it easier for a team member who is already used to going to that page and that site rather than sending them off to the Power BI service online instead. And then finally, we talked about Microsoft Forms for project surveys and how that can be a good way of gathering data from your team members.